Dr. Brennan Petrov paces the small room after playing the message a fourth time. Brought by a herald just 2 days ago, the message shook him to his core. He stops pacing and plays it again. Brennan, I believe I've uncovered new information. The Ascendancy used AI to run their empire. This much is given. But I think they were much more than that. I just discovered a data file in a ruin my team is excavating that talks about a bonding. At first we thought it might be some sort of religious ceremony. But the more I think about it, it seems to be talking about a union between Ascendant and AI. What if that's what gave them their powers? Can you imagine? We would just need to find an operational AI to test that theory. Anyway, it's a direction at least. If you find anything concrete, let us know. Good luck. For a fifth time, the message ends, and Brennan stares at the empty space. He could list a half-dozen Ascendancy sites within reach, but they had all been studied to some extent. No, he'd have to find something further out, something undiscovered, but that meant finding a ship. A chime sounds and the voice of the station master rings out. All hands be advised. An unknown fleet has dropped out of E-Drive and is approaching. Dismissing the message, Dr. Petrov buries it in his files and grabs his coat. If this mystery fleet isn't aggressive, maybe he could trade for information on Ascendant sites that might be unexplored. He has to find an AI, so the great work can begin. Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures. As always, I'm your game master and solo player, Steve Morrison. This week is the Season 1 finale, and as such, I've got a few housekeeping notes before we jump into the episode. First of all, thank you so much to everyone who has listened over the last 34 episodes. I've had an absolute blast doing them. Second, I want to say a special thanks to Shawn Tomkin for designing Ironsworn Starforged. It is such an amazing system that really shines, and I have absolutely loved playing it. Despite my desire to bounce around to different systems and tell different stories, the temptation to continue playing Starforged at the expense of all others was almost too much to bear. Almost. An additional thanks goes to Tim at Tabletop Audio, who made some killer music tracks for the Starforged Kickstarter, some of which are featured in this episode, during the first scene after this intro, and the final scene. Go check out tabletopaudio.com for some awesome ambient music. Finally, I'm considering doing a Season 1 wrap-up episode to answer any lingering questions. If you have any questions for me, whether they be about Lucius's adventures or beyond, feel free to send them to me on Twitter at errantsolopod, or email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. And now for the important bit. On this week's episode, Lucius and crew face off against Dr. Brennan Petrov and decide the fate of the World Seeder. Find out what happens on episode 34, Three's Company. A bright light fills the room as Dr. Petrov's hand touches the quartz orb that contains method. Now, we don't know if Dr. Petrov is going to be successful in bonding with method. So let's just start off and ask the Oracle. I think the easy question here is, does he create a connection with method that makes him into a paragon like Adelie? And I think that is a straight up 50-50. So we're going to ask the Oracle. 51 or greater is going to be a yes. 68 is the total, so yes, he does. As his hand touches the quartz, this light flashes out, and Lucius and Adelie and Aurelia and Mila are sort of pushed back a little bit. They're shielding their eyes with their hands as the light flashes. And when it fades, the orb is sitting there inert. And Dr. Petrov looks up and says, "So this is what it's like. Amazing. The information coursing through my mind. I know so much of what this station's potential is." And he looks over at Lucius and the others and he says, "Think of all the things we can do." And Lucius draws his pistol and says, "I'm sorry, Doctor, but that's not going to happen. You've crossed the line, and this ends here." Dr. Petrov stands and says, "Don't be a fool. With the knowledge that method provides me, I have become more powerful than you can imagine." To which Adelie laughs and says, "Dr. Petrov, I don't think you have fully grasped the gravity of this situation. When you bond with an AI, you are taking on part of their persona. You are subsuming some of their essence into yourself. You may have gained knowledge, but you don't know what you're dealing with yet. You don't know the true power." And Petrov looks at her and says, "We'll find out." And he is going to start moving his hands, and the obsidian pillars that are in this room that make up the computer consoles light up, and suddenly a portal opens up in the ceiling and Ascendant drones begin pouring out. And it is time to enter the fray. I think this is going to be a formidable fight, as it is going to be defeat Petrov. It'll be formidable, and we are going to enter the fray. This is going to be facing off against your foe, so it is plus heart on this. Enter the fray. We got +2. 8 on the action die, a 5, and a 10 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So on a weak hit, I can either take +2 momentum, or I can take control. I am going to take control, as I think these drones begin descending down through the ceiling. Lucius draws his plasma pistol. Aurelia draws her weapon, and Lieutenant Mila raises their rifle and takes aim, and Lucius says, "Adelie, you contend with the Paragon. The rest of you cover her." So we're going to gain ground and roll plus edge as we're maneuvering into position. This is +2 on this. 5 on the action die, a 5 and a 10 on the challenge dice, and we're just starting off with a miss. So on a miss, your foe gains the upper hand. The fight moves to a new location, or you encounter a new peril. You are in a bad spot and must pay the price. So I think Adelie steps forward, and she is contending with Petrov. She is gathering forth the energy within her to send off a massive sort of electrostatic blast at him. And as she is about to unleash that, this wave of drones descends and begins circling around Petrov. And the blast that she fires off hits them, and it actually absorbs into the drones. Like, the drones are prepared for it, and they absorb that energy, and so none of it passes through to Petrov. While that's happening, Lucius and the others are trying to move to cover and are firing at some of the other drones that are flying around. and there are just too many of them. They are curving around and moving all over the room, and it is impossible for Lucius, Aurelia, and Lieutenant Mila to find cover from all of them. And as they are dealing with this, I think Lucius is going to say, Adelie, I don't think we can maintain cover from them. We need your help. And he shouts out to Aurelia and to Mila and says, get to Adelie. And they are going to rush over to her, and she is going to see this, say, it's all right, Lucius, I've got this. And she extends a shield out around them. And so we're going to react under fire, but I'm going to use my sidekick asset to allow Adelie to roll at +3, which is right now currently her health, in order to do this defensive maneuver for them. So it's going to be +3 on this, react under fire. 9 on the action die, a 5 and a 9 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So on a weak hit with react under fire, you succeed but face a troublesome cost. Make a suffer move and stay in a bad spot. Now, first of all, because of my asset, I do get +1 momentum on a hit for that. So that's going to take us up to 7 momentum. And then I think the -1 that I'm going to take is Lucius actually gets winged a couple times by some of the drones as he's getting over into cover by Adelie. And so I'm actually going to take a hit to health, which takes his health down to 2. His spirit is also at 2, and his supply is also at 2. So we're now seeing Lucius and Aurelia and Mila crouch down around Adelie as she has formed this shield around them and is keeping out the drones that are attacking. And Lucius is going to call out to the others and say, fire on the drones around Petrov. And he is going to command Brutus to attack as well. And so this is going to be a clash. This is at a distance, so it's plus edge, and Lucius does not get a bonus for Brutus, but if he does get a hit, he will get some momentum. But I'm going to take +1 for Mila being present as well. So this is going to be +3 on this clash. 8 on the action die, a 7 and a 10 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So on a weak hit, mark progress, which means we're going to mark 1 full box of progress on this formidable combat, but you are dealt a counterblow or setback. Stay in a bad spot and pay the price. So we're going to go ahead and roll our pay the price. 91. You are delayed or put at a disadvantage. So I think the disadvantage here is that more and more drones continue pouring out through the ceiling, and that there is no way to get to Petrov without getting through these drones first. And so they are just going to continue to have to wade their way through a ridiculous number of these drones. So Lucius, looking around, he sees that one of those pillars is within the bubble of Adelie's defensive shield, and he is going to creep over there and is going to tap into the system, and he's going to try and counter some of Petrov/Method's control of these drones. And to do that, he's going to use his wits, and because he has the tech asset, he's going to take +1 on this roll as he reacts under fire. So this is going to be +4 on this. 7 on the action die, a 6 and a 2 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. So we finally get to seize control. That is going to give him a +1 on momentum. That's going to take our momentum up to 8. And Lucius is now in control as he diverts some of the drones away from the battle and is actually able to, I think, turn some of them towards the fighting. And then he is going to say, all right, everyone, let's go. And they are going to try and advance towards Petrov using Adelie holding up this shield as they are firing from within it. And this is going to be maneuvering once again. This time gain ground, so it's plus edge. 7 on the action die, a 3 and a 2 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. On a strong hit, I can choose 2. I can either mark progress, take +2 momentum, or add +1 to my next move. So I'm going to go ahead and mark progress, which is going to take us to 2 full boxes of progress on this. And I'm also going to add +1 to my next move, which is going to be a strike. As they are moving through this swarm of Ascendant drones, they are firing out at the drones around them, trying to clear a path. And this is going to be plus edge, which is +2, and +1 for that gain ground strong hit. So +3 on this strike. 5 on the action die, a 3 and a 5 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So I can mark progress twice, but expose myself to danger. You are in a bad spot. I have 8 momentum, so I could burn that right now and turn this into a strong hit, but I'm not going to. So I'm going to take the 2 progress, which is going to take us up to 4 boxes of progress, and then we expose ourselves and we're in a bad spot. And I think what this represents is we are now close enough that Petrov is able to start sending sparks of energy at Adelie's shield, and she has to stop moving and concentrate to keep it up as this barrage of electrical energy blasts is coming from all over. I think they're actually coming from the pillars around this room, and they're lancing out and striking against this shield that Adelie is holding over her head, and is slowly, I think, shrinking inward as they are struggling. Lucius is going to send Brutus out into the mass of Ascendant drones, and he is going to use Brutus to draw fire and create a diversion by reacting under fire, and is going to roll plus its health. Brutus's health is 5, so this is going to be +5 on this react under fire as it flies up through the shield and just begins firing and spinning around, attacking these drones, drawing some attention and creating a diversion. 6 on the action die, a 2 and a 3 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. So we are going to take +1 momentum, and we are going to mark progress as part of that asset because I got a strong hit. So my momentum goes up to 9, and that takes us to 5 out of 10 boxes on this track. So I think Brutus takes out like 20 or 30 of these drones as it flies up and is unleashing this barrage of shots. And it eases up the battle enough that Adelie and the others are able to start moving forward once again. And the swarm of drones around Dr. Petrov is beginning to lessen. And so he is trying to reform them, but Lucius, Aurelia, and Mila are continuing to fire at this wave after wave of drones. And so we're going to strike again, plus edge. And this is going to be +1 for the combat bot, as Brutus provides +1 on strike. So this will be +3 on this. 9 on the action die, a 5 and a 4 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. So we're going to mark progress twice. That takes us to 7 boxes of progress. We are in control. Oh, I could continue on and gain a little bit more progress. I think the drones around Petrov are beginning to loosen up, and Lucius sees an opening where he could take the shot, but it would be a risky shot. So he is going to exhort Adelie and the others to keep going. He's going to say, We're almost there. We just need to get a little bit closer and then we'll have a clean shot. Adelie, hold this shield up a little longer. The rest of you keep firing. And we're going to risk it and we're going to strike again. And this is going to be +3 as they continue to fire at the waves of drones. 6 on the action die, a 9 and a 1 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So mark progress twice, but expose yourself to danger. You are in a bad spot. And I can't even turn that into a strong hit with my momentum because my momentum is at 9. So I'm going to mark up to 9 boxes of progress, but we are in a bad spot. So Petrov, I think, senses that they're drawing close and just begins to unleash a torrent of these electrical blasts at them. And I think as Lucius is peering through, he can see that Petrov is overexerting himself, that he has not fully bonded with Method, and there are flecks of skin that are starting to slough off as he is channeling an immense amount of energy through himself at them, and the doctor has this like manic look in his eyes, and Lucius is going to react under fire. He's going to change up the plan. He's going to say, Adelie, if you drop this shield, I know it's dangerous, but if you can get close enough, can you wrestle Method away from him? And she says, I think so. It's worth a try, right? And he says, all right, on 3, drop the shield. Everybody keep firing. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. And he's going to roll plus wits as they're trying to change up the plan. So instead of trying to shoot Dr. Petrov, he's trying to get Adelie close enough that she can basically draw Method out of him and take the AI away from him. +3 on this. 4 on the action die, a 4 and a 2 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. But I am going to burn my momentum right now, which is at 9. I'm going to burn it down to 2, and I'm going to take the strong hit on that, which is going to give me back a momentum, which is nice. And then I am going to go ahead and take decisive action as Lucius and the others are able to cover Adelie enough that she is able to force her way through the barrage of electrical energy channeling out of Petrov. She's holding out one hand as she takes one step forward each time, and the energy is blasting against her hand and like channeling over it. And Lucius very sort of concernedly is watching as her hand is almost like blackening as she is absorbing just incredible amounts of energy that Petrov is putting out. And she is drawing closer and closer and closer. And we are going to roll the challenge dice against our progress of 9. And we've got 2 3s, which is not only a strong hit, but also a match. So on a strong hit, you prevail, take +1 momentum. So that takes my momentum up to 4. Adelie pushes forward, forcing her way through this band of electrical energy that Petrov has tried to raise around himself now, much the way that she did creating this shield. He realizes that she is drawing closer and closer, and he, I think, realizes that he cannot keep her away. He cannot destroy her with this output of energy, and so he is channeling that inward, trying to defend himself as her hand penetrates through this barrier that he's erected, and she touches his chest. There's a bright flash again as she presses her hand, and for a moment, Lucius, who's watching this, he sees almost as though her hand passes through his chest and into him, and then she removes it. And there is this glowing ethereal orb in her hand as she pulls it back. And Petrov falls to his knees, coughing. He vomits off to the side. And Adelie is standing there in the center of this room, in the center of this AI chamber. And she is looking at Method, the AI that controls this station. And I don't know what she's going to do, because she has 2 AIs already absorbed within her. And I don't think she would absorb it out of a sense of greed like Petrov did, so much as just a familiarity, and maybe the AIs within her, the Warden and Query, are calling out for this artificial intelligence that they recognize to come join them. And I don't know if Adelie's going to put Method back in the crystal, or if Adelie is going to absorb Method. So let's ask the Oracle. I think it's 50-50. 51 or greater will say that Adelie puts Method back into the station. 47. So Adelie, holding this glowing orb, she looks at it. She looks at the crystal. She closes her hand around the luminescent sphere and brings it close to her chest, and it disappears into her. And then she drops to a knee in front of Petrov, facing him. They're now both on their knees, and he looks up at her and he says, "Why? Why did you take her away?" Adelie looks up at him and says, "Because you were trying to control, and you cannot control them. You have to accept them, and they have to accept you. And you were found wanting, and you were rejected." And then she's going to stand up and raise her hand. I think as Method is bonded with her, there is this flash of anger, and she raises her hand as if to strike him down. And Lucius steps forward and grabs a hold of her arm and says, "Adelie, don't. He's not worth it." And she looks down at the scientist as he's groveling on the floor, groaning and wiping away sick from his mouth. And then she turns to Lucius and says, "You're right." With Dr. Petrov defeated, I'm going to mark 2 more ticks of progress on my extreme vow. That takes me to 6 full boxes of progress. And I think with Petrov neutralized and Method sorted, we don't know exactly how that is going to play out. I think it's time to fulfill this vow. I think Lucius has done everything in his power to stop the Ironhawks from gaining control of the World Seeder and causing another cataclysm. And it's time to find out how effective his efforts have been. So again, I've got 6 boxes of progress, which is not a whole lot. I'm going to roll the challenge dice and see how this goes. I've got a 10 and a 1 for a weak hit. So on a weak hit, as above, but there is more to be done, or you realize the truth of your quest. If you swear an iron vow to set things right, take your full legacy reward. Otherwise, make the reward 1 rank lower. So this was an extreme vow, which would be 2 boxes, but it is going to just be 1 box of progress instead, which is going to take me up to 5 full boxes and half of a 6th box on my quest's legacy track. Lucius and the others return to Ukamesh and his workshop. They bring Petrov with them. The scientist has been bound and is now under Lieutenant Mila's oversight, and they are able to return without incident. When they arrive, Ukamesh sees them and sees Adelie, and I think can sense the change within her. And I think this is the truth of the quest. They were able to stop the Ironhawks from gaining control of the station and causing another cataclysm. They were able to bring some semblance of peace between the Ironhawks and Lodestar. But as they enter the workshop, Ukamesh says, "Welcome back. It seems you were successful." Lucius nods and says, "We were, although there was a price." And he kind of looks at Adelie, and she says, "I have assumed method." The AI was, for a brief time, bonded with Dr. Petrov here, and I was afraid that trying to return her to the crystal would destabilize the system. I had to take her essence on into myself. It was the only way to be sure. Ukamesh is going to nod and say, "I understand, but that does present us with a problem. You see, method was integral to my efforts to bring back my people." And Lucius steps forward and says, "What do you mean by that, Ukamesh? How are you going to bring them back?" And he turns to the screen, which displays the small planetoid at the heart of the World Seeder. And he says, "My people are sleeping on that world. It is meant to be our rebirth, our new home, our new hope. But without method to maintain it, I'm afraid I don't know if my calculations will be successful." Lucius looks at the planetoid and says, "I'm sorry, Ukamesh, but we scanned it already and we did not find any life down there." Ukamesh says, "They are buried deep, deep within the surface, deep enough to keep them safe. I wanted to make sure that they would be protected from anyone or anything that might endanger them. They are safe. I have looked at the scans from my own systems. 10,000 of them sleep within, waiting to be woken to a world that has not been burned by the cataclysm. Woken to a world that they are able to live in and enjoy. But I don't know if that will be possible now." Adelie steps forward and says, "Ukamesh, I made a choice. I made a choice to assume method, to bring her into the bond that I have with Warden and Query. When I did that, when I made that decision, I also made the decision to assume whatever responsibilities method possessed. And if that means helping you bring back your people, it's my honor." Ukamesh looks at her and says, "You, a human, would do that for me? For us? I have not known your people for long, but even the short time I have been aware of you, that seems a great sacrifice. Adelie looks over at Lucius and then back to Ukamesh and says, I've learned a thing or two about making sacrifices. I have been gifted these powers through ancient knowledge that is not ancient to you. It is who you are. It is what your people have been. How could I turn my back on you? On the Ascendants? I am the Warden. I am Query. I am Method. And I will help you save your people. A few hours pass. Lucius and Aurelia and Mila return to the Reclaimer. They board the ship and fly back to the Emancipation. When they board, they're met by clan leader Aerith and Commander Caspian, and also by Captain Simeon. The Ironhawk captain looks somewhat out of place on the deck of the Lodestar flagship, but he stands proudly in their midst. As Lucius and Aurelia and Mila descend the ramp, Mila bringing Dr. Petrov with them, Aurelia runs across the open deck and wraps her arms around Nishana, and they kiss for a brief moment. And then, as if remembering the gravity of the situation, Aurelia steps back and turns to Captain Simeon and nods. The Ironhawk captain returns the nod. As Lucius approaches, he says, Is everything all right here? Does the peace hold? Captain Simeon says, It does. And Nishana says, It does. We have made our arrangements. We have spoken at length, and I believe we have come to some small agreement. As long as the World Seeder does not fall under anyone's possession, all will be well. To that, Lucius takes a deep breath and says, About the World Seeder. There are Ascendants still alive on board, and it is their station. It is their power to control, and it's going to stay that way. Nishana and Simeon share a look, and there is immediately tension in the air. And Lucius holds up a hand and he says, Please, please don't turn this into another war that we don't need. Please. We have fought enough. And these Ascendants, they deserve a chance as much as anyone to try and live and survive. If we tried to form some sort of peace around sharing the World Seeder amongst the clans, eventually someone would try to take it. Maybe it would be Tarquin, maybe it would be Idebrin, maybe it would be one of the others. Eventually somebody would try to control it. Why not leave it in the hands of the people who built it? And in so doing, make peace with a whole new race, a race that we thought gone when we came to this forge. And yet now there's the possibility that we might not be alone in this universe, that we might not be alone in the forge. We have to give them a chance, because if we don't, then we're no better than the Scourge. And we should be. We should be so much better. Please. And I'm going to roll plus heart as we compel. 3 on the action die. A 4 and a 2 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So as above, but their agreement comes with a demand or complication. Envision their counteroffer. I think the counteroffer comes from Nishana. And she says, I agree, Lucius. We do not want another war. And giving the World Seeder into the control of one of the clans would be a terrible choice. But giving the World Seeder into the power of someone that we don't know, don't understand, can't even possibly communicate with, is very dangerous. You offered once before to be the caretaker of the World Seeder. Will you do so now? I can't speak for Simeon, but I, at least, would be more comfortable with this arrangement if there was someone on board I knew I could trust. Lucius looks at Simeon and he nods and says, I agree. I don't know that my clan is going to appreciate the return of the Ascendants as much as you do, but I think you're right. We have to give them a chance. And who knows? Maybe we can have peace. Lucius looks at them and says, I agree, but it is going to be at a cost. The World Seeder is leaving this area of space. The Ascendants are, well, they're not ready yet to contend with a forge full of humanity. They're still trying to work out the details of what their continued world is going to be. So, and he reaches up for that iron pendant that he took off an Ascendant ruin long, long ago when he was a child at one of his mother's digs. And he says, I swear by this iron that I will accompany the Ascendants where they go, and I will be humanity's ambassador to them. And when they are ready to return to the Forge and return to a place of communication, that I will be there as humanity's spokesman. I will stand for all of us. In the next few hours, Lucius spends some time with Aurelia. They're aboard the Reclaimer, looking out through the viewport towards the stars beyond the docking bay of the Emancipation. Aurelia is sitting beside Lucius, and she says, Lucius, I'm incredibly proud of you. You've done amazing things here in Veritas. And I believe that you will do amazing things far beyond here. It has been so wonderful to get to know you again. And I hope wherever your path takes you, that I see you again. Lucius turns to her and smiles and says, Auntie, you were always my favorite. You were always an inspiration to me and someone that I aspired to be like. I'm glad I got to see you again. I'm glad I got to go on adventures with you. But I'm also glad that you're staying here. Lodestar and Nishana, they're going to need you And despite what happened between my father and you, the clan is going to need you. Maybe all the clans are going to need you. I don't know what the Ascendants are really like. I hope they're peaceful. I hope they can live alongside humans sometime in the future. And I'm going to do my best to make sure that they're ready for that. And maybe when I come back, I'll make sure that we're ready for that too. But I think that might be your task, Auntie. I think you might have to be the voice of reason from here on out. Preparing people for the possibility that the Ascendants aren't gone, that the Ascendants are going to return, and that we are going to have to share this world with them. With all the blessings and curses that might entail. But I know you can do it. Because you're my Aunt Aurelia. And you can do everything. They stand and hug. And Lucius holds tight to his aunt, and Aurelia likewise holds him tight. And when they eventually separate, Lucius is surprised to see a tear on his aunt's cheek, and she quickly wipes it away and says, "Now you be careful out there, Lucius. Be brave. Be bold. Be a Tarquin. As I know you are, and as I know you will be." Lucius smiles at her and says, "Don't worry, Auntie. We'll see each other again." Before the Reclaimer leaves the Emancipation, Lieutenant Commander Mila walks aboard. They approach Lucius and smile and say, "Well, looks like you're all set to go." Lucius nods and says, "I am. I'm excited. I was always fascinated by the Ascendancy. I always wanted to spend some time studying Ascendant ruins. Now I get to spend time studying new Ascendant construction. But I'm going to miss this place." Mila hands Lucius a box full of various data disks and stuff like that. And says, "Here, I pulled together all of the navigational data that I could get my hands on. You can use it to triangulate your position wherever you end up and, find a way back." Lucius smiles and says, "I'm not going to be lost. We're just going away from where civilization is right now." Mila nods and says, "I know. Besides, you're a good enough pilot. You can find your way back. I just want to make sure. Because, well, I appreciate you. You've been a good traveling companion and a good leader and, well," and Lieutenant Commander Mila salutes and then extends a hand, which Lucius takes and shakes. The Reclaimer launches from the Emancipation's docking bay and flies out towards the World Seeder. The Winnower and the fleet of the Ironhawks is off to one side, weapons powered down, There has been no sign of aggression. The Emancipation and the Lodestar fleet are off to the other side, quietly pulling back. As the Reclaimer crosses the threshold of the barrier that surrounds the World Seeder, it passes right through, as if it was expected. And the Reclaimer lands aboard the World Seeder. Lucius makes his way to the control center, where Ukamesh is working. Adelie stands at a control board and is looking at a string of figures and calculations. She turns when Lucius enters the room, and she smiles a little bit. And she says, "So they must have taken it pretty well then." Lucius chuckles. Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of a hard sell, but we got it sorted out. They're going to let us go. And he turns to look at Ukamesh and says, "Humanity is giving the Ascendancy a chance to be reborn. Let's not waste that chance." Ukamesh nods and says, "I have no desire to." Good. Are we ready? He turns and looks at Adelie, and Adelie nods and says, "I have made all the calculations. I cannot believe this World Seeder has an E-drive. It's incredible. All of this is incredible, Lucius. I can't believe we're here. I can't believe we're seeing all of this. When I left Viridian, I had no idea what the future held. I had no idea the marvels that I would behold. I shudder to think what would have happened if you hadn't come along when you did. If I had never met you. All of these wonders, all of these mysteries would have been lost to me." Lucius steps beside her and takes her hand and says, "You know, you are amazing. And I'm glad that fate brought us together, because I cannot imagine getting to this place and standing here with an Ascendant and 10,000 Ascendants asleep beneath our feet without you." I wouldn't be making this journey if it wasn't for you, Adelie. Ukamesh from behind, perhaps having been alone for a long time and not reading the room, says, "All systems are prepared. We are ready to engage the E-drive." Lucius and Adelie share a smile. Adelie reaches a hand down to the console and turns to Lucius and says, "Are you ready?" And Lucius, smiling, says, "Let's undertake this expedition." Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures, and thanks so much to Syrinscape for the lovely ambient sounds and music throughout the episode. If you enjoyed the show, please tell anyone and everyone in your life about it. And if you haven't already, please rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really does help others find me. If you want to interact with me, my handle on Instagram and Twitter is @ErrantSoloPod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.